Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at 7 bottom dwelling fish that are perfect for your aquarium. So all of these fish don't really get too big at all, and most of them are quite peaceful fish, which means they do make a great addition into any community aquarium. Obviously, the most important thing, however, is that they all stay around the bottom of your aquarium, and they are the perfect addition if you are looking for something to add a little bit of more life around that bottom part of your aquarium. But yeah, I guess without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video. So as for the first fish on the list, we have a super common little unique exotic fish. We have coolie loaches. So coolie loaches, in my opinion, are one of the coolest little tropical fish that you can keep in your aquarium. They do look a lot like some sort of eel, although obviously they are a loach. And generally, loaches do have that more long, slender body. So coolie loaches are one of the only fish that stay at the bottom of your aquarium no matter what. Obviously, they will swim up the sides of the glass every now and then, although predominantly they do just stick to your substrate. So these guys, I believe, are nocturnal, and if you do keep them in your aquarium, you will see them a lot of the time at night, just because obviously they are quite a small fish, which means they can be preyed upon quite easily. So coming out at night sort of reduces the risk of them getting eaten by much larger fish. So obviously, being a tropical fish, you do want to keep these guys with a heater, and I think it's super important to remember, if you are trying to keep these guys in a heated aquarium, you do need to make sure there's no case around your heater that they can hide in, just because if they get stuck in there, obviously it's super duper hot and they can quite easily die. But if you do just have a unprotected glass heater in your aquarium, that should be completely fine. So you will need to feed these guys, even though a lot of the time people do keep them as cleaner fish just to pick up the scraps of your other fish. Although, yeah, like I said, you do need to feed them, so you can feed them things like Cory wafers or algae wafers. Obviously, they will eat a lot of the stuff that your fish miss, but it's definitely recommended to supplement their diet with some sort of sinking wafer. As for tank mates, they are very peaceful and they shouldn't really mess with any fish at all. Obviously, you don't want to keep them with anything too big just because they can get eaten quite easily. But yeah, coolie loaches are definitely some of the best bottom dwelling fish that you can get for your aquarium. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a super cool South American cichlid. We have Bolivian rams. So Bolivian rams are obviously a super docile little ram cichlid that a lot of the time are kept in community aquariums. So these guys do stay around the bottom of your aquarium quite a lot. Obviously, they do venture up into the mid to top when they are feeding, but predominantly they do stay around the substrate level, just because most of the time they are sifting through your sand substrate looking for leftover scraps from the fish above. So being a ram cichlid, you do want to keep these guys in a heated aquarium and with tropical water parameters. As for tank mates, they can go with pretty much everything. They are very peaceful, and as long as you don't keep them with any larger bully fish, they should be completely fine. Being a bottom dwelling fish as well, you do want to provide them with plenty of hiding spaces, just because they can be quite vulnerable down at the bottom of your aquarium. So providing them with a bunch of plants and rocks to hide in is obviously super beneficial. Something I would highly recommend keeping in their aquarium is a coconut hut. Obviously, not only will they breed in this, but they will sort of create their own territory around it, and that's generally where they'll spend most of their time. So if you can, I would definitely put a coconut cave in their aquarium. But yeah, I definitely think Bolivian ram cichlids are another great little bottom dwelling fish that you can keep in your tank. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a super small little catfish. We have Corydoras catfish. So obviously, when they are breeding, Corydoras catfish do tend to swim up the sides of your aquarium and rest on plants, although a majority of their time is spent around the bottom of your aquarium, sifting through the substrate, trying to find scraps of food. So these guys are a super common little beginner fish, and they are kept by a lot of people as a cleaner fish, although obviously you do definitely need to supplement their diet with some sort of sinking pellet. So something I would highly recommend feeding these guys every now and then is either frozen bloodworms or live blackworms. Adding a food item like this into their diet, I find, is super beneficial, and it really conditions them ready to breed. So another thing I would highly recommend if you are planning on keeping these guys is you need to make sure you do have a safe substrate for them. So you want to make sure you have a really nice soft grade of sand or either a bare bottom tank. Just because if you do have larger pieces of gravel or lava rock in your aquarium, you may find that the corridors, barbels, which are the whiskers on the catfish, do get worn down and injured, which is obviously something you definitely do not want, just because they are vital for your corridors to sense its way around your aquarium. So another thing that can damage your corridors bubbles is actually the water conditions. So you do want to make sure you are keeping them in clean water, just because if you are keeping them in dirty, stagnant water, you will find their bubbles begin to diminish, and it's just not healthy for the fish. So yeah, I would definitely recommend just double checking you have a safe substrate for them, and also making sure you do plenty of nice water changes just to keep their water nice and clean for them. So you do obviously also want to make sure you are keeping them in a heated aquarium with tropical water parameters. And as for tank mates, they can go with pretty much anything as long as they aren't getting stressed out too much. Just because these guys can actually release a toxin into the water if they do get too stressed. So if you do have them in a smaller sized aquarium and they are getting stressed out quite a lot, this toxin can build up and actually be quite fatal to your corridors and to their tank mates. But yeah, I would definitely keep these things in mind before you get them. Although if you are planning on getting them, I definitely think these guys make a great little bottom dwelling aquarium fish that you can get for your fish tank. So as for the next fish on our list, we have another cichlid. We have Crebensis. So Crebensis are a super colorful little African cichlid that do generally hang out around the bottom of your aquarium. So these guys are quite hardy, and even though they are an African cichlid, they can thrive in tropical water parameters with tropical fish. So there are quite a few different species out there, and all of them do require the same care level. So the only things I would recommend for these guys to keep them nice and healthy is obviously a super nutrient rich, high protein, varied diet, along with plenty of hiding spaces. Just because they are a bottom dwelling fish like the other fish on this list, they can get preyed upon quite easily, so they do feel a lot safer if you do have something like a coconut cave in there. But besides that, they are super simple fish to care for, and they do definitely make a great little beginner community fish. And if you are looking for a nice little fish to add life to around the bottom of your aquarium, I would highly recommend Crebensis. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a super unique little fish. We have spiny eels. So spiny eels are a super cool looking little tropical fish. Although they are not true eels and they're actually more related to loaches, they do definitely make a great oddball fish for your aquarium. So the really cool thing about these guys is if you do keep them in a sand bottom tank, you will find that they do actually bury themselves in the sand every now and then, which is not only cool to see, but it's actually super helpful for your aquarium as well. So obviously a lot of particles build up in your sand, and if your spiny eels are digging through it, kicking all that into the water column, your filters can much easily pick that up, which obviously just improves the overall water quality in your aquarium. So they are definitely beneficial for that reason. So spiny eels are a super peaceful little fish, and as long as you're feeding them a nice healthy diet, you shouldn't find they do take any of your smaller fish in your aquarium. I haven't personally experienced it, although I have heard of some spiny eels taking smaller fish during the night, especially much larger spiny eels. So being a tropical fish, it is super beneficial to keep them in a heated aquarium, although they can survive without it. But it is definitely vital to keep them with tropical water parameters. And as long as you're not keeping these guys with any much larger bully fish which stress them out too much, they definitely make another great little addition as a bottom dwelling fish for your aquarium. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a super unique Australian native. We have freshwater soles. So freshwater soles are quite hard to come by, although they are sometimes available at local fish stores. So being a sole fish, obviously you do want to keep them in a sand substrate tank, just because they will bury themselves in the sand to make them feel a lot more safe. And they are quite a predatory fish, which means you don't want to keep them with any smaller bottom-dwelling fish, just because anything that goes over the top of them in their aquarium that is small enough, they will definitely try and eat. But besides that, I would highly recommend keeping them with other Australian natives such as rainbow fish, just because obviously they do live together in nature, and I would assume they do make great tank mates for each other. But yeah, I definitely think freshwater soles or freshwater flounder make another great addition as a bottom-dwelling fish in your aquarium. Moving on to the final fish on our list, we have a super prehistoric looking fish. We have biches. So here in Australia, biches are still quite expensive and rare, and there's only really two species that you can get your hands on, so those being the tiger bicher and the Senegal biches. So biches are a really interesting fish, and when they are young, they actually have external gills, which obviously go away as they get older. But yeah, I just reckon they are a super cool, unique little fish, and I would love to get some one day. So these guys do get quite large, although you can keep them with a lot of different species. So you can keep them with things like freshwater stingrays or other tropical fish like that, or you can obviously keep them with African cichlids. So obviously these guys will stay around the bottom of your aquarium, which is why they are on this list, and I would highly recommend giving them rocks to rest on and other plants and stuff for them to hide in. So they are very hardy, although if they are getting nipped at by really large aggressive fish like African cichlids, that can stress them out a lot, and you will notice when they do get stressed, they'll generally sit around the top of your aquarium. So you definitely do need to give these guys a varied diet if you want them to stay healthy in your aquarium, and you do also want to keep them at a stable water parameters. But as long as you keep all that stuff under control, I definitely think biches are another great little bottom-dwelling fish that you can get for your aquarium. But with that being said, that is going to bring us to the end of today's video. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope I helped you guys find a new little fish that you can keep to bring a little bit of life to the bottom of your aquarium. If you did enjoy today's video and you haven't done so already, please make sure to go down and subscribe. And while you're down there, comment your thoughts on today's video. I always love going through and reading them all. But yeah, with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you all in that next video.